Welcome to the deep dive. Today you send us down a fascinating path right into the Kama Sutra.
Yes.
Now, the moment most people hear Kama Sutra, I think, their mind probably jumps straight to images of incredibly complicated sexual positions.
That's usually the first thought, yeah.
And while those are definitely present, what we found digging into our sources is that they're really just one small facet of a much broader and, well, much older conversation.
That's spot on. What's truly compelling is the sheer scope of this ancient Indian text. We're talking dating back roughly 1500 to maybe 2000 years ago.
Wow.
It's not some slim volume either. It's a substantial piece of work. It has 36 chapters, and they're organized around 7 core themes.
Some themes.
Right. So when we talk about those, famous 64 sexual positions, it's really important to remember they occupy a relatively minor part of this much larger discussion, a discussion about pleasure, relationships, even societal roles.
Okay, let's unpack that a little. Who's the person who put all of this together, especially those specific positions we all tend to think about?
Well, the name most associated with compiling, let's say, a definitive version of the Kama Sutra is Vatsyana.
Vatsyana. Okay.
And he approached the topic quite systematically, actually. He reasoned that there are essentially 8 fundamental ways people engage in sexual intercourse.
8 basic ways.
Uh-huh. And then within each of those, he described 8 distinct positions. So that's how we arrive at that iconic number 64. It was a very structured way of kind of categorizing the possibilities.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. One of the foundational ideas, right, within the Kama Sutra is that pleasure itself. It isn't seen as a sin.
Exactly.
That feels like a pretty significant difference from some of the moral frameworks that have shaped Western thinking over time, doesn't it?
It absolutely is a huge difference. If we connect this to the bigger picture of the society it came from, the Kama Sutra reflects a cultural acceptance, maybe even a celebration of sensual enjoyment.
A celebration, yeah.
As a natural and vital part of human life.
Yeah.
It wasn't something to be suppressed or viewed with inherent suspicion. And that perspective really paved the way for such a detailed exploration of intimacy and sexual expression, kind of without the moral baggage we sometimes see elsewhere.
So when we talk about these positions, you mentioned some are quite well known even today. What kind of range are we looking at? Are they all, incredibly acrobatic? Do they require years of yoga practice?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, while there are certainly some more physically demanding and creative positions described, the Kama Sutra also includes what we'd consider classic fundamental positions. Things like the missionary position, doggy style, spooning.
The basic.
The basics, exactly. And these weren't seen as less important or anything. They were presented as perfectly valid, enjoyable ways for couples to be intimate. Perhaps especially, early on in a relationship when familiarity and comfort might be key.
It's always the positions named after animals that really stick in my mind. Can you give us a few examples of those from the Kama Sutra? Maybe like a sense of what they involve?
Oh, definitely. The animal names are memorable. One is the frog.
The frog. Okay.
In this one, the woman is positioned on top of the man, but her legs are drawn back and spread wide, sort of mimicking a frog's posture.
Right.
This often allows for deeper penetration and a different angle of connection.
Makes sense.
Then there's the wolf. This is a standing position. The man penetrates the woman from behind while she bends forward, maybe at about a 45-degree angle, perhaps resting her hands on a bed or a table.
Okay, I can picture that.
And the text suggests this allows her to clench her legs, which might provide some indirect clitoral stimulation. So you see, even the names often hint at the physical dynamics involved.
The wolf. Yeah, I can definitely visualize that. So beyond the animal kingdom, what other ways did the Kama Sutra categorize these positions?
You're right, the categorization goes further. It wasn't just evocative names. The text also groups positions based on the physical orientation, face-to-face. Positions where one partner is behind the other. And interestingly, it distinguishes between whether the male or female is more active in those.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as well as standing and sitting positions. It's quite comprehensive. And significantly, oral sex gets its own consideration.
Right.
With mentions of practices we'd recognize today, like a mutual oral position they call the Congress of the Raven.
Congress of the Raven.
I know, right? But also some more elaborate variations, including one rather dramatically named the Tree of Sin, which involves a man being inverted somehow.
The Tree of Sin. That certainly paints a picture. I was also quite surprised, actually, to learn that the Kama Sutra even addresses intimacy during pregnancy.
Yeah.
That shows a real consideration for like different life stages within a relationship.
It really does. And that detail highlights the Kama Sutra's intention to be a comprehensive guide to a fulfilling erotic life within a relationship context.
Yeah.
It includes specific recommendations for positions suitable and comfortable for different stages of pregnancy, taking into account the woman's changing body, the need to avoid pressure on the abdomen.
Makes sense.
And there are even mentions of positions believed to potentially increase the chances of conception, which reflects, the societal importance of procreation back then.
You mentioned some of the positions could be quite acrobatic. Could you give us another example of one that really pushes the boundaries of, say, flexibility and coordination?
Okay, sure. Consider the monkey's union.
The monkey's union. All right.
In this, the man lies on his back, legs drawn upwards. The woman then sits facing away from him, resting on her knees, but without placing her full weight on him. It requires a degree of balance, trust.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Another example is the reverse alignment. Here, the woman lies on top of the man, on her stomach, but with her head towards his feet, and vice versa. So their genitals are aligned.
Oh.
The text even suggests how to transition into this from another position, the Amazon, indicating a level of progression and experimentation encouraged. These definitely speak to a desire for variety, maybe a deeper physical intimacy.
Those sound like they require not just physical dexterity, but also, a certain level of comfort and adventurousness between partners.
So this wasn't just one person's random ideas.
Yeah.
What's the story behind the Kama Sutra? How did it, come to be?
Well, the origins are quite interesting. There's a legend, actually, that credits the very first exploration of sexual practices to the god Shiva and the female aspect of himself.
Okay.
Their profound experiences were supposedly then documented, passed down, eventually reaching Shiva's servant Nadine.
Wow.
He's sometimes credited with the earliest form of the teachings.
Right. Then, over the centuries, this initial body of knowledge was revised, expanded upon, organized by various scholars. The version we know today is largely attributed to Malnagavatsiana, likely around the 3rd century AD.
So it evolved.
Exactly. It's a text that evolved over time through many thinkers.
And was it intended for everyone in society back then, regardless of, social standing?
That's interesting. The text itself seems to indicate it was primarily aimed at the wealthier classes.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Mostly due to the high rates of illiteracy among the poorer populations during that era, the ability to read, study, engage with such a detailed work that would have been much more accessible to those with resources and education.
Right, that makes sense. And when did this ancient wisdom finally become available, in its complete form to the Western world?
The first complete English translation wasn't until 1883.
1883.
Yeah,
Yeah.
during the British Raj in India, it was a pretty significant undertaking by the renowned British explorer and scholar Richard Francis Burton.
Burton.
Wow.
Yes.
A figure known for his linguistic skills and his fascination with diverse cultures and often taboo subjects.
Now, one key point that really stood out to me is that the Kama Sutra is distinct from other ancient Indian texts, like the Tantras. It's not considered sacred or religious scripture.
That's a crucial distinction, yeah. Really key for understanding its purpose and approach. Unlike the Tantras, which have a strong spiritual, ritualistic significance, often involve guidance from a guru.
Right.
The Kama Sutra doesn't hold that same religious weight. The text itself doesn't really engage directly with tantric philosophy. Its primary aim is much more, practical.
Practical, okay.
Focused on the secular aspects of love, pleasure, social conduct within relationships. It's intended as a guide, for both men and women, on how to navigate desires and interactions for a more fulfilling life together.
Okay, that gives us a really solid foundation. So, much more than just a catalog of adventurous positions, it's about understanding the nuances of pleasure and intimacy within a relationship. Now, let's delve into some of the other fascinating details our sources highlighted, beyond just the physical acts themselves.
Absolutely. Moving beyond just intercourse positions, the Kama Sutra devotes a considerable amount of attention to, for instance, the art of kissing.
Kissing, okay.
And it goes far beyond just a simple peck. It describes various types of kisses and their intended effects, There's the bent kiss.
That kiss.
Yeah, which you often see in romantic movies, where couples tilt their heads to deepen the connection. Then there's the turned kiss, where one partner gently turns the other's face, maybe to draw their full attention or initiate something more intimate.
It's very specific.
Very specific. These descriptions highlight a real awareness of the subtle communication within physical intimacy.
The names themselves are so evocative, aren't they? The bent kiss, the turned kiss. What other subtleties did the Kama Sutra explore with kissing?
Well, there's the kiss that kindles love, described as slow, lingering, perhaps used to awaken a partner gently, build towards greater intimacy.
Nice.
Then you have the kiss that turns away compassion, which sounds a bit dramatic, but it's portrayed as a more intense, passionate kiss, intended to shift a partner's focus away from other concerns, towards desire.
Right, focus them.
And finally, the demonstrative kiss. This is about expressing affection and desire openly, whether in private or even subtly in public. The text mentions something like kissing your own fingers while gazing intently at your partner as a form of demonstrative kiss.
Wow, it's like a whole language expressed through touch.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's fascinating, almost a choreography of affection. Now, I also came across something in our sources called Kama fitness. That sounds like a rather modern term applied to an ancient text. What's that about?
Huh. Yeah, that's definitely a contemporary framing. But it describes erotic exercises detailed within the Kama Sutra. The idea is they aren't just about pleasure, they also involve physical movements that could contribute to, say, muscle tone and flexibility.
Okay.
One example is described as legs and buttocks detachments, where a standing woman bends forward while her partner supports her. Sounds a bit like partner-assisted stretching.
So it's like a workout, but with a decidedly sensual aim. Give us another example of these Kama fitness routines.
Okay, another intriguing one is described as working the oblique abdominals on a Swiss ball.
On a Swiss ball, seriously?
Apparently. The woman lies semi-supine on a stability ball, performs torso twists, and the description suggests the man is positioned to perform cunnilingus concurrently.
Right.
Then there's something called the push-up bra, where the woman does push-ups while lying on top of her supine partner, adding resistance. These examples really do blur the lines between physical activity and intimate connection.
Okay, these are definitely creative approaches to fitness.
Right.
What about exercises we might recognize more readily, like actual exercises?
Yeah, even familiar exercises like squats and the bridge get a Kama Sutra twist. During a squat, the description suggests the woman descends while her partner, lying on his back, lifts his head and shoulders towards her pubis. A unique interaction. In the bridge pose, as the woman lifts her pelvis, her partner might sit at her feet doing gentle caresses or cunnilingus, integrating sensual touch into the yoga-inspired move.
Wow.
The text even mentions dips for triceps, using the partner's knees for support. And they suggest concluding with what they call spicy stretching.
Spicy stretching, I love that.
Yeah, where the man lifts the woman's legs while she's lying down, allowing for a deep stretch and further intimate contact.
Our source even provided some estimated calorie burn for various sexual activities. That's a rather unexpected detail.
It is, isn't it? According to these estimates, even just taking off clothes burns a few calories. 20 minutes of cuddling, kissing, caressing could use up over 100 calories for one partner, slightly less for the other.
Okay.
10 minutes in missionary is estimated around 250 calories. 10 minutes with the woman on top lying down could burn significantly more for her, maybe 300, compared to less for him.
Interesting.
And standing intimacy, for 10 minutes, is suggested to burn a substantial number for both partners. Even an orgasm itself is estimated to account for over 100 calories.
It certainly adds a different dimension to the idea of a vigorous encounter.
Doesn't it just?
Well, that's certainly a fun way to think about it. Now, the Kama Sutra's perspective on oral pleasure, that seems to have evolved or at least been interpreted differently over time, hasn't it?
Yes, that's a good point. In the ancient text itself, oral sex wasn't initially given a particularly high status. It was sometimes associated with certain social roles, not really presented as a primary form of intimate pleasure within marriage.
Right.
However, more contemporary understandings and interpretations definitely recognize the significant pleasure and intimacy it can provide for many couples. Our source even details stages for, like, solo fellatio.
Oh.
Starting gentle, progressing through kissing, pressing, full oral penetration, paying attention to different areas. Similarly, for solo cunnilingus, it emphasizes gentle exploration of the whole vulvar area, not just the clitoris, varying pressure, maybe tongue penetration. This modern view highlights a broader acceptance.
And the Kama Sutra itself does outline different categories of positions specifically designed to facilitate oral pleasure between partners, doesn't it?
Exactly. There are supine positions described, like a variation of the 69 where partners lie side by side for simultaneous stimulation.
Okay.
There's also one where the receiving partner is more active, lowering themselves onto the giver's face. Seated positions include one where the passive partner sits back while the active partner kneels.
Right.
And of course, the classic 69 itself is mentioned, referred to with that memorable phrase, Congress of a Crow.
Congress of a Crow. That's a phrase I won't soon forget. What about standing positions for oral pleasure? That seems like it might require some ingenuity.
Yeah, while perhaps less commonly detailed in the ancient texts specifically for oral pleasure while standing, the underlying principles of proximity and access could certainly be adapted. Our source tends to focus more on the supine, seated, and doggy-style variations for oral interactions, likely due to stability and comfort.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, our source also delves into the connection between yoga poses and potentially boosting sexual performance. That's an interesting intersection of ancient practices.
It is. The thinking here is that certain yoga asanas can improve physical attributes beneficial for sex. Things like flexibility, stamina, blood flow to the pelvic region.
Right.
The Shishwasana, or child's pose, is recommended for relaxation, reducing tension. Setubandhasana, the bridge pose, is suggested for strengthening pelvic floor muscles, which can contribute to more intense orgasm.
Bridge pose, okay.
Garudasana, or eagle pose, is thought to potentially increase blood circulation in the pelvic area.
And there are other yoga poses mentioned in this context.
Yes, Uttara Konasana, or goddess pose, is mentioned for potentially alleviating menstrual discomfort, which could indirectly enhance sexual well-being. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, is a good general pose for overall flexibility and blood flow.
Downward dog. Classic.
And Uttanapristhasana, lizard pose, is suggested for increasing hip flexibility, opening the pelvis. It's about harnessing the physical benefits of yoga to enhance the physical aspects of intimacy.
So it's really holistic view, connecting physical well-being and ancient practices to sexual health and enjoyment. Now, the source also touches on some surprisingly forward-thinking aspects of the Kama Sutra, particularly in its views on women.
This is a really significant point and often overlooked. Despite being written so long ago, the Kama Sutra contains passages that can be interpreted as remarkably progressive for their time regarding women's roles and rights.
Like what?
It touches upon ideas of female autonomy, sexual freedom, the importance of education for women. There's even this concept presented that women should be knowledgeable and empowered in sexual matters.
Really?
Yeah, encouraged to learn about these aspects before marriage so they can actively participate in their sexual and domestic lives. This really challenges the common perception of ancient texts as uniformly patriarchal.
That's quite a revelation for such an ancient document. And there is even specific sex positions described with the woman's pleasure or control in mind, right?
Yes, our source lists several examples. Samukha is a standing, face-to-face position, allowing deep connection and control of movement. Tripadam is described as a quicker position. Woman wraps one leg around the man's hips, offering maybe a unique angle.
Okay.
Pititaka involves the woman lying on her back, legs raised towards the man's chest, giving her control over depth and rhythm. Jana Kripura is more energetic. Man holds the woman's buttocks, allowing varied angles.
Right.
And Vusha, essentially the reverse cowgirl position, clearly places the woman in control of pace and depth. These examples demonstrate a consideration for female agency and pleasure.
It's encouraging to see that female pleasure was a recognized aspect. We also briefly mentioned positions for conceiving earlier. Does the source offer any more specific insights on that?
It does. It revisits missionary and doggy style as having been traditionally emphasized for conception.
Right.
The rationale given is that these positions tend to facilitate deeper penetration, more direct deposition of sperm closer to the cervix and fallopian tubes, key factors for fertilization.
Makes biological sense.
Exactly. But the source notes that while these were historically highlighted, ultimately any pleasurable sexual activity resulting in ejaculation near the cervix has potential. So while certain positions might be suggested, they aren't the only way.
Now, our source throws out a list of 15 most powerful Kama Sutra sex positions. That sounds like a curated selection of particularly noteworthy ones.
It seems to be, yeah. A selection highlighting positions with specific anatomical advantages or potential for unique sensations. Some include Utphalaka, or blossoming.
Blossoming.
Woman lies head low, groin elevated, said to be good for couples with mismatched sizes. Indronika, Queen of Heaven, involves the man wrapping thighs around the woman using hands to open her vagina. Suggests a deep connection.
Wow.
Vidrumbitaka, or expanding, is another mention as potentially accommodating a larger penis. And Vishitataka, envelopment, described as suitable for a smaller penis. Larger vulva woman crosses legs to enhance closeness. The names are certainly descriptive.
They really are. What are some of the other positions that made it onto this powerful list?
Others include Vadavaka, the mare woman's vagina grips the penis without hip movement, emphasizing internal muscle control.
The mare. Okay.
Vanudaritaka, broken flute woman, lies with one leg on man's shoulder, likely altering the angle. Sulachitaka, impalement similar, but woman's foot on man's head, suggesting a more extreme angle.
Yeah.
Padmasana, the lotus position, incorporates yoga. Paravritaka, the spin, woman rotates 180 degrees on her seated partner. Sthitarata, standing, intercourse against a wall, woman lifts legs.
Okay.
Avalambitaka, hanging more advanced standing, needs strength. Dhanuka, the cow familiar doggy style. And finally, the peasant, city dweller, the pitcher, and Parshvasamputa lateral box seem to be variations on seated and side-lying positions.
That's quite a diverse array, highlighting different physical dynamics, levels of intensity. Now, our source also points out some potential advantages of embracing the principles of the Kama Sutra beyond just the bedroom.
Yes, it highlights some surprisingly progressive social views embedded in the text. It mentions the Kama Sutra advocating for a woman's right to own property.
Property rights, really.
Yeah, believing in women having control over household finances, domestic affairs, even stating a woman could leave her husband if he consistently failed to provide her with sexual pleasure.
Quite modern sounding.
Isn't it? It also notes the text allowed for widows to remarry, which wasn't always the norm back then. These points really underscore that the Kama Sutra wasn't solely focused on sexual technique, but also touch upon broader aspects of relationships, societal roles.
Those are some really significant social statements defined within a text, often narrowly perceived as just, a sex manual. Now, we have a section titled Mind-Blowing Sex Positions. That definitely piques my interest.
This seems to be a more contemporary selection, often highlighted for potential intense sensations or unique angles. Examples include the plow, various rider forms, woman on top, the Amazon woman squats over curled up partner,
The Amazon, okay.
the frog, prone, rear raised, the hero, woman's ankles near ears, the curled angel, spooning variation, the star, modified missionary, gee whiz, woman legs on partner's shoulders, magic mountain, scissoring, the chairman, woman faces away on seated partner, missionary with pillow mods, the pinball wizard, partial bridge, reverse cowgirl with a pillow tip, stand and deliver, ballet dance, leg wrapped around partner, and the good X, seated, facing, legs crossed. Quite a collection emphasizing variety, maybe a bit of daring.
That's quite a creative list with some very memorable names. And then we have a section specifically listing sexual positions for him. What does that cover?
These are positions often cited as being particularly pleasurable from the male perspective, according to the source. They include the butterfly, various leg lifting variations by the woman,
Butterfly, right.
reverse cowgirl, man supine, woman faces feet, spooning, side-lying, Janakripara, man holds woman with locked elbows, tripadam, standing face-to-face, one leg raised, and Pititaka, woman's knees on man's chest. Good to see a focus on mutual pleasure there.
Absolutely. What about more specific interest? Our source even mentions foot fetish sex positions.
Yes, for those with that interest, the source suggests positions incorporating foot play. These include the toe grip, penis between partners' two wrestles,
Okay.
the wedge, woman in man's lap, legs on shoulders, allows foot access, and the 69 position, which naturally offers opportunities for oral sex and foot interaction.
Okay, it seems quite comprehensive in its exploration. What about positions specifically for oral sex, beyond the general categories we've already discussed? Are there more specifics?
There are more detailed descriptions mentioned, yes, like lover's head to tail, facilitating simultaneous oral. Penetrating the eye sounds complex, involving anal entry alongside clitoral stimulation.
Right.
Climbing the tree describes the woman wrapping legs high around a standing man. There's also mention of penetration with deep backward movement, and the gazelle and the stallion, described as emphasizing vaginal sensations combined with oral acts. The names really do capture the imagery.
They truly do, almost like miniature erotic poems.
Mhm.
Now, anal sex positions also get a mention in our sources. What did it say there?
Yes, for anal intercourse, the source lists quite a variety. Positions like the pivot, seesawing, suggesting a rocking notion, buttering, receiving partner prone, circular movements.
Buttering?
Yes. The concealed door, insert of partner on top, the caress of the bud, again, penetration with deep backward movement. Another description of the seesaw, the closed and the opened ring, the ripe mango plum, the door ajar,
Wow, okay.
and several variations on buttering and seesawing, as well as face-to-face positions and simply the top position. It indicates a significant consideration for this form of intimacy as well.
It seems the Kama Sutra and its interpreters have really explored a wide spectrum of possibilities. What about positions where the man is encouraged to take maybe a less physically strenuous role?
Interestingly, there's a section on resting positions for the male, suggests a shift in dynamic, woman takes a more active role. Examples include massage and sucking on the mast, pincers from the front, riding the horse, driving the nail home, the open pincer, and simply the top position again, implying the man can be more passive while the woman controls the movement. Shows consideration for endurance, mutual satisfaction.
That's a thoughtful addition. Recognizing intimacy isn't always high energy. Our source also mentions romantic sex positions. What falls into that?
For those seeking a more tender, connected experience, the source suggests squatting, woman on top facing partner, reclining Amazon, woman on man's chest facing away,
Yeah.
peace sign, both flat, legs intertwined, and the anvil, modified missionary, woman's legs on man's shoulders. These seem to emphasize closeness, gentle interaction.
And even for a change of environment, there are bathtub sex positions.
Yes. For taking intimacy into the water, the source lists the missionary, go down on her, sitting, facing each other or back to back, the doggy position, and the lifeboat, which seems more focused on sensual closeness, maybe foreplay in the water, highlights incorporating different settings.
Definitely adds an element of novelty. And we touched on this earlier, but there are also specific sex positions for pregnant women listed again for comfort and safety.
Right, just to recap those. Doggy position, modified missionary using pillows, reverse cowgirl done slowly and gently, and spooning, all chosen to minimize pressure on the abdomen and promote comfort.
Now, shifting focus slightly, our source delves into the topic of orgasm itself, exploring different types, ways to potentially achieve them.
Yeah, this section discusses various types of orgasms people might experience, including vaginal or G-spot orgasms, clitoral orgasms, core orgasms, maybe linked to physical exertion.
Core orgasms.
Yeah, blend orgasms involving simultaneous stimulation, even the concept of skin orgasms, maybe triggered by sensory input like music.
Oh.
It also touches on physical benefits, stress reduction, calorie burn, and potential spiritual benefits like increased receptivity, connection. And that intriguing idea of using orgasm for manifestation is mentioned too.
Orgasm for manifestation. That's a fascinating concept. And there are also tips provided for improving penetration during intercourse, right?
Yes. To enhance the experience, the source suggests trying different positions like trapeze, seated scissors, lotus, sexy magic mountain, and the great female or superwoman, each offering a unique angle and depth.
And for those seeking to achieve a more intense or copious orgasm, what advice does the source offer?
The key tips include creating a relaxing atmosphere, reducing inhibitions, taking your time, not rushing the experience, and cultivating a belief in your ability to achieve orgasm. Mindset and environment seem really key.
There's even a bonus section mentioned on potentially achieving orgasm relatively quickly, the extended sexual orgasm, or ESO, said to be possible in around 15 minutes.
Yes, this section outlines a technique. It involves some solo preparation, then gentle initial stimulation, focusing on recognizing the signs of approaching orgasm. The key is then momentarily pausing direct clitoral stimulation right at the peak, and transitioning to inner vaginal strokes, then alternating between the two to kind of prolong and intensify the overall experience.
That sounds like a technique that requires, a good understanding of one's own body. Now, our source also includes some simple tricks to drive your partner crazy. I'm sure our listeners are keen to hear those.
Well, these tips emphasize things like continuous experimentation to keep things exciting, incorporating distraction and fantasy, occasionally letting your partner take the lead, be in control, understanding the U-spot, that sensitive area between the vagina and clitoris, taking your time to build arousal, connecting with feminine energy, utilizing oral sex power, maintaining open communication about desires.
Communication is key.
Absolutely. Focusing on building sensitivity through touch, trying different locations, exploring shared fantasies, and trying unusual experiences. It's all about paying attention, really.
That's a great reminder of the many facets of intimacy. And what about summarizing what a partner truly wants in bed? Always helpful to have a concise overview.
According to the source, key desires include connecting with femininity, experiencing oral sex power, open, honest communication, building sensitivity through touch, slowing down and savoring, being open to intimacy anywhere, exploring fantasies, and being willing to try new, maybe unconventional things together. It's about a holistic, engaged approach.
Finally, our source even lists some homeopathic products sometimes suggested for potentially boosting orgasm. What were those?
These include goji berries, ginkgo biloba, ginseng, mora puama,
Okay.
as well as B vitamins and zinc, all sometimes suggested for potential effects on blood circulation, hormone support, mood, nerve function, all factors that can play a role in sexual response.
Well, this has truly been a deep and comprehensive dive into the world of the Kama Sutra, revealing it to be so much more than just, that collection of acrobatic positions.
Indeed. What becomes clear is that this ancient text offers a rich, nuanced perspective on intimacy, pleasure, the art of human connection. It encourages a mindful, communicative, explorative approach to relationships and sexual expression.
So for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has not only been informative, but has also maybe sparked a sense of curiosity, perhaps even some inspiration.
Hopefully.
Maybe it's encouraged you to explore these ideas further, perhaps even consider looking into the original text itself for an even richer understanding. Ultimately, the Kama Sutra, in its entirety, seems to offer a timeless perspective on fostering happy, fulfilling relationships through a deeper understanding of our desires and the connections we share.
A really valuable perspective.
And on that thought, we bring this deep dive to a close.